Hi everyone, welcome to your lesson on characteristics of life. This is your first lesson for cycle 2, which is themed interactions. The first thing that we're going to talk about when we are discussing characteristics of life is how to decide whether something's living or non-living. So there's 4 main characteristics of living things. Organization. Organization refers to how an organism's body is organized. So some types of organisms are organized really simply, like bacteria, while others are much more complex, like humans. The ability to develop and grow is another characteristic of living things. So things that don't live, they can't develop and grow, like rocks. Rocks don't grow. The ability to respond to the environment. So how things respond to what's around them, that means that something's living if it's able to respond to the environment. And you might think of a plant. A plant responds to its environment. If it's not getting a lot of water, it's going to shrivel up, and that's a sign that its environment has done something to change it. And last characteristic of living things is the ability to reproduce, so to make more of itself. So here's a nice little picture to show you the examples of living things versus non-living things. Sometimes people think soil is living because so many living things live in soil, but soil itself is not living. Even though there's lots of microbes and little microorganisms in soil, the soil itself is made up of broken down rocks and minerals. Water, light, minerals, rocks, air, they are not living things. Whereas plants, animals, different kinds of protists, which are single-celled organisms, which we'll be going into this week as well, fungus and bacteria are all living things. This slide goes along with the first characteristic of living things, which is organization. So this shows you the organization of a multicellular organism, which humans and many animals are multicelled organisms, or all animals rather. So you start with a single cell, and the cells then clump together to make tissues. The tissues then go together to make organs. Organs go together to make organ systems, and organ systems clump together, make up the actual organism. So you can see the top row is for animals, the bottom row is for plants. So there are different cells in plants and animals, and we're going to really be studying that in detail starting next week. So there are certain things that all living things need in order to stay alive. The first thing is they all need energy. Plants get their energy from the sun, and humans, we get our energy, and animals from food. However, remember that our food is grown outside and requires energy from the sun. So really, we can all trace our energy needs back to the sun. The second thing that all living things need to stay alive are materials. Materials mean things such as gases, such as oxygen, carbon dioxide. Plants need carbon dioxide, water. Those are all different materials that we need. And then last, we need living space. We need room to live and to grow. This is a great word cloud. The bigger the word, the more important it is. And so this shows you in much more detail the 3 examples I just went over of the 3 needs, the 3 main needs of life. So you have shelter, water, food, minerals, energy. And then all the little words are different examples of those things. All right, so now that we're into what makes up a living thing and what living things need, what is a living thing? All living things are made up of cells, and cells are the very, very, very smallest part of life. However, not all living things are made up of the same cells. And that's very important to keep in mind and to remember as we're going into our study of life. The first one we're going to go over, they're called unicellular organisms. Uni, U-N-I, meaning one. So unicellular organisms are made up of just one cell. Hence, the name single-celled organisms. Unicellular and single-celled organisms are the same thing. The cells in single-celled or unicellular organisms, they all have the same needs. And these are referred to as prokaryotes. Almost all unicellular organisms are prokaryotes. Multicellular organisms are made up of more than one cell. The cells in multicellular organisms have different cells that perform different functions, and these are eukaryotes. All right, so now I'm going to show you some diagrams of the difference between unicellular and multicellular organisms, as well as prokaryotes and eukaryotes, so that you can understand. We're learning a lot of new terms, so be patient with yourself as you start to sort it all out and to chunk it up in your brain. It will start to make more sense the more we work with it. And don't forget to be color coding on your graphic organizer. You have two main things here, unicellular and multicellular, and then some characteristics of each. Okay, so again, unicellular are organisms that just are made up of a single cell, and multicellular organisms are made up of many different cells. So examples of unicellular organisms are amoeba, bacteria, paramecium. All paramecium organisms are made up of just one cell, and they all look identical. Whereas plants and animals are made up of many different cells. Okay, so here is the difference between a prokaryotic and a eukaryotic cell. So the prokaryotic cell, or prokaryotes, are made up of one cell. They are the single-celled organisms. They're very simple. The eukaryotic cell is the multicellular organism, is made up of eukaryotic cells, and they are much more complex, much more detailed, and you can tell just by looking at that. They have similarities, and you can see they both have plasma membranes, cytoplasm, DNA, a nucleus region, ribosomes. However, in the prokaryote, it's all in one section, whereas in the eukaryote, they're all in different packages. So the DNA in the prokaryote is just all strewn about in the middle, and in the DNA in the eukaryote is tucked away in the nucleus. The ribosomes are both in the cytoplasm. The cytoplasm is the yellow stuff that all the organelles are floating in. The organelles are on the right-hand side. In the eukaryotic cell, there's the different parts of the cell that help it function. The prokaryotic cell, everything is just floating around all together, where the eukaryotic, they're all packaged up nice and neat in their own little package called an organelle. To the single-celled organisms, there are not many different types of cells that make up each of these organisms. They're made up of just one type of cell. And an amoeba, for example, will always have a nucleus. It will always have just a food vacuole, a contractile vacuole, and a pseudopodium. Whereas humans have all these different cells that have to work together with all of our different organ systems to make our bodies function.